Plus on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver, along with Ben Leo, Benjamin Butterworth, Darren Grimes and Lewis Oakley. Tonight on the show, Keir Starmer is in a little bit of trouble with his backbenchers and his shadow cabinet. Guess what? Over Israel-Gaza. What should he do next?
Humza's humdinger permits a Musk mauling.
Why Britain's decline makes me want to move to Dubai.
Why we need to fire Britain's bigoted bobbies.
And I'll be arguing that we should date people regardless of their political leanings.
It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, the best Saturday night takeaway you could order. Expect fiery debates, spicy opinions and a huge topping of fun. Tonight, I'm joined by Darren and Benjamin, as usual, but Albie is away this weekend, the part-timer. So we are joined by our very own, ever-versatile Ben Leo, and this week we're letting him have a go at the old presenting thing, see if he's any good. And we also see the return of the formidable Lewis Oakley.
Yep, you know the drill. Each host gets 60 seconds to outline their argument about the chosen topic. Then we all pile in and eventually agree that Benjamin's wrong. And of course, we want to know your views on all the topics as well. Get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. And also, don't miss your chance to flummox the 5. We are 2 hours again this week, so get your questions in now for the end of the show. Nothing is off limits, from Tory election prospects to Benjamin Butterworth's personal grooming habits. Yuck. Though both may be equally as disappointing. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday night news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. This breaking news just into us in the last few minutes. Israel's Prime Minister says the next stage of its war with Hamas has begun. Benjamin Netanyahu gave an address a few moments ago and he confirmed ground forces have entered northern Gaza, what he has referred to as the stronghold of evil. Well, the enclave's been pounded with artillery fire and airstrikes since last night, as Israel launched its heaviest bombardment since the conflict began. Civilians who've been told to move south for their own safety remain cut off, as all communications are down. That means no new casualty figures have been released. We'll have more from Benjamin Netanyahu in our later news programmes. Meanwhile, waves of rockets have been fired from Gaza towards southern Israel throughout the day, with sirens sounding in its biggest city, Tel Aviv. Well, these pictures show a series of missiles being intercepted by the Iron Dome defences. Some, though, have landed, including in Tel Aviv and also in the city of Ashkelon. And no casualties have been reported. Around 100,000 people have taken to the streets of London, demanding an end to the bombing of Gaza. 2 people were arrested earlier following clashes with police near Downing Street. The Met says an officer has been taken to hospital. Elsewhere, more than 200 people staged a sit-in on the concourse of Waterloo Station. The Met's warned officers will intervene if protesters are deemed to be supporting terrorism. Former leadership candidate for the SNP, Ash Regan, has defected, joining the ranks of rival Alba Party. She's become Alba's first MSP and says her old party has lost its focus on independence. Alba rivals the SNP as a pro-independence party and was set up by former First Minister Alex Salmond. Humza Yousaf, the SNP leader, played down the defection, saying it's no great loss and he's not surprised. A proposal to close rail ticket offices has resulted in the biggest ever response to a public consultation. The RMT union says around 750,000 passengers have had their say ahead of an expected announcement on the future of ticket offices at train stations. And the union's head, Mick Lynch, has warned the government against the closures. He says 98% of respondents are opposed to the controversial plan. And it doesn't bode well for the weekend weather. Forecasters are warning of further flooding to some areas of the country that are still reeling from the effects of Storm Babette. Yellow weather warnings are in place for the east coast of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the south of England this weekend. Heavy rain and winds of up to 70 miles an hour will affect some parts of the country that are already flooded. A shopping centre in Hastings in East Sussex was evacuated earlier because of that, and some rail services have also been suspended. Well, that is it for the moment. I'll be back with more in about an hour's time. Now it is over to the Saturday 5.
Thank you, Aaron. It's Saturday night. You're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver, and I can promise that you are in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on with tonight's first debate.
Yeah, well, first up, it's back to you, actually, Emily, who is bursting to talk about the mutiny in Labour over Israel, Gaza. Emily, take it away.
Yes, so as a politician, Keir Starmer had gotten quite used to comfortably sitting on the fence. The journey towards power was going relatively smoothly, central tactic being revealing as little as possible so as to alienate the fewest number of voters. It appears this way of doing things is no longer going to cut it, though, as a Labour civil war has erupted over Starmer's apparent support for Israel's siege on Gaza. But it seems he's a little bit confused. Let's have a look.
Siege is appropriate, cutting off power, cutting off water.
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. I was not saying that Israel had the right to cut off water, food, fuel or medicine.
So watching that, again, it's hard to know what Keir Starmer actually thinks about the situation in Israel, Gaza. It's complicated, but if you make a statement, you should either stick by it or explain at least why you're not lying now. So does he stick? This is the dilemma for him. Does he stick with his current position that Israel has a right to defend itself, to maintain a siege even, and refrain from calling for a ceasefire? Or does he give in to the growing mutiny within his party ranks and take a more overtly pro-Palestinian line? The pressure is very much mounting on him. Last week, pro-Palestinian demonstrators were captured chanting Labour Party blood on your hands outside the party's HQ in London. On Thursday, trade union activists took the day off to blockade a UK weapons factory to protest the use of them in Israel. More than 250 Muslim Labour councillors signed a public letter this week to the leadership demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. 9 Labour councillors have resigned over Starmer's stance, and now Labour has lost its majority of Oxford City Council. And according to polling, the Labour Party is losing Muslim votes by the minute. Indeed, it's reported that a new party was registered with the Electoral Commission less than a week after the Hamas attacks, that being the Party of Islam. His PR trip to the South Wales Islamic Centre turned into an absolute PR disaster, didn't it? Adding to his woes, rallying more of the Labour Party, more of the Muslim vote and pro-Palestine electorate against him. And of course, worrying to a lot of us was that in trying to show unity, what did he do? He actually exposed the very real and dangerous divisions in our society. Then you've got Anna Sarwar, Sadiq Khan, Andy Burnham, 7 Labour shadow ministers openly defying Sir Keir Starmer in calling for a ceasefire. What does a ceasefire mean in practical terms? It's rather unclear. If Israel stops its fire, can we expect Hamas, a bloodthirsty, Jew-hating Islamist terror group, to do the same? We all look on in horror at the bloodshed, the lives lost, the children caught up in this, all killed for no fault of their own. So what is Keir going to do? I ask the panel tonight. Darren, what do you make of Keir Starmer's stance and the pressure that there is on him now to change it?
I mean, you are correct in saying that he's taken more positions than the Kama Sutra. You didn't quite put it like that, but that's the way I'd visualise it. I think ultimately, I would say to people, if you look at what this man is saying right now, you had those two clips there in which he backed, he was talking about what Israel is doing in Gaza to actually bring about the end of Hamas, and his position changing within, it hasn't been very long, right? That's changed within a week. Now, I would say, does he have the moral clarity to actually stand up and say, I think those arguing, and let's be absolutely frank here, some people were all too fast to come out in support of what Hamas did in Israel on October 7th. He had the clarity then to say, the moral clarity to say, look, I do not support the people who are supportive of what Hamas did in Israel. He stood resolutely against it. Now he's backtracking on that. And I think that is cowardice. And it doesn't strike me as the kind of leadership that we need to see in a country like ours. Let's not forget, in Parliament this week, they put up a shield in the memory of Sir David Amess, an MP that was murdered at the hands of an Islamist. I'm afraid that there are far too many who are all too afraid to actually call out those who have repugnant views in certain communities.
Yeah, Benjamin, it looks like Keir Starmer's in a bit of a tricky situation. What should he do in this position, really? He's got huge numbers of councillors all rallying against him. After he had this PR disaster at this Islamic centre in South Wales, he has had thousands, if not millions, of people telling him that he is wrong, that they won't support the Labour Party with this stance. What is he supposed to do now? Can we believe what he says if he then changes his mind?
I mean, look, I think claims of a sort of fracture in the Labour Party on this are slightly overblown. So 20-odd councillors at the last number I saw have quit the party over it, but there are 6,500 Labour councillors in the country, so that's a tiny number. And if you cast your minds back to the Iraq War, which obviously a great majority of the Muslim community felt extremely unhappy about a Labour government doing that, they still overwhelmingly voted Labour, with exceptions of, you know, the Una King, George Galloway case. Now, the Party of Islam that you mentioned, I read their submission to the Electoral Commission. It's completely illiterate, so I don't think there's any danger of them being a serious party. It made no sense whatsoever.
OK,
but I think
that's good to know.
I think George Galloway is the real danger to Keir Starmer, that cockroach of a politician who just constantly comes back. And we know he is very effective at whipping up racial tensions in the Muslim community and capitalising on Labour on these issues. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back into the fray soon. But ultimately, I think Keir Starmer deserves respect for the reasons that Darren started to outline, because he had that immediate clarity on it, and he finds himself between a rock and a hard place on this, because he has to recover from Corbyn's repugnant anti-Semitism and has to really go out of his way to prove that he's changed. And, by the way, I always point this out, Keir Starmer is married to an observant Jew and his two kids go to synagogue. Yes,
Benjamin, but he came under pressure, didn't he? And then he chose to water down what he was saying. He went from saying a siege is absolutely fine as part of Israel's defence. Then he said, no, it's not. So,
well, look,
which one is it?
He's called
it's quite important, isn't it?
Of course, and he's called Sir Flip-Flop for a reason. That's his unflattering nickname.
No one calls him that.
No, definitely not. But look, I agree with you, funnily enough, Benjamin. He cannot afford to back down, and especially as he's pretty much got an open goal for government next year. Let's all be frank. What he can't do is back down now, look weak, and head into the election next year living up to his name, Sir Flip-Flop. What he should have done is done a Joe Biden during the election, shoved himself in his basement and not come out. He needed to condemn Hamas for the atrocities on October the 7th, support Israel, and not waver in the face of pressure.
But so much of his support, Lewis, is pro-Palestinian.
Well, but this is the thing. I think he did the right thing. He came out, was very clear at the beginning, but the situation is changing and he's seeing his own MPs and, you know, the people in the Labour Party are divided on this, as are some people in the country. So he has got to find this way of understanding all the points of view and really bringing it together. So I kind of feel like this is just a natural phase he's got to go through as he becomes leader of a country. He's got to find a way to bring these sides together. He's not going to do it by having a hard line that he's not going to then listen to the other people. And I know it sounds flip-floppy.
So you're saying the facts have changed, so therefore his position has changed, although it was on the very same policy, so...
I think so. There is natural evolution, and as people talk about this more as well, there are differing views. As we've seen protests, he can't just be in a blind box.
Yeah. The facts haven't changed. The fact of the matter is that Labour Party MPs are terrified of being deselected.
Let's see how it gets on. Time will tell next year. So look, up next it's Benjamin, who's lost all hope with the police. Mr. Butterworth, over to you.
Yes, I have lost faith in the police. Britain's police aren't just useless, they're bigots too. We had a story today that after a series of horrific exposés of sex attacker cops, we had one of two police officers who many would conclude have probably done something racist. Those officers, Jonathan Campbell and Sam Franks, pulled over two athletes and their baby who were black and said that they could smell cannabis in the car and conducted a very intrusive stop and search. Except that video footage later showed that they'd made it up. They didn't have cannabis, they didn't smell of cannabis, there was no reason to search the car, and they've been sacked because of what it was concluded was racist behaviour, racist profiling. Now, good that they've been sacked, but I was shocked when I looked up the scale of officers among Britain's police who were accused of things like being racism. There are currently 1,000 police officers who are either suspended or on limited duties because of allegations. That's 1 in 34. That's insane. Can you imagine a workplace where 1 in 34 people are suspended because they can't do their job or accused of something serious? We've got a real problem when you've got more police officers accused of crimes than arresting people for them. And I think we need to rip up our police service in this country and we need to kick the bigots out. Because too often, these people are getting away with terrible behaviour that nobody else would get away with, and I think the police should be better than that. So it's time to sack the bigots. Now, speaking of bigots, Darren, what do you think?
Well, I've got one question for you. If you were a member of His Majesty's Police and you saw someone speed away with blacked-out windows after there had been crime in the area and they refused to stop for a police car, you being the police officer, would you not arrest that person?
I mean, it all depends on the circumstances.
Would you not arrest that person?
Benjamin probably...
Well, you can't just arrest someone for
driving away from a police car. Yes, you can.
No, of course you can't arrest someone for driving away from a police officer.
You absolutely can. If you do not obey the instruction of an officer of the law, you are breaking the law.
Look, I think there are a lot of police in this country who are behaving in a way that's unacceptable. You had the Louise Casey report, right, that looked into what these problems were, and she found that they were institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic, and found endless examples. And I can't stand hard-right people like you who will go, oh, it's just woke nonsense, stop moaning about it. Actually, when police are pursuing people because of their own prejudices, they're not following serious crimes.
Look, I think ultimately what's going to happen in this country if people like Benjamin get their own way is that the police will be so paralysed with fear out of being accused of things like racism, out of being accused of homophobia, transphobia, every watchword that Benjamin has just mentioned, that they won't arrest people. Woke Britain is going to be a woke joke thanks to people like Benjamin.
Emily, lots of these stories, some of them horrific, involving the behaviour of officers with women. How do you feel about the Met Police? Do you feel safe? If you were alone at night, would you go to an officer?
Yes, absolutely, I would go to an officer. Whether he would actually help me or manage to do anything, I don't know. Police officers have helped me in the past and they were very nice. Others have been useless when it comes to crimes like robbery and such things. I think it's difficult. Reports have shown that there are institutional biases or examples of racism, examples of sexism, misogyny, whatever, right? I have a problem, actually, separate from that, with a lot of police being far too soft-touch when it comes to policing. If you take the recent protests on our streets, I don't think they came down hard enough on those who were chanting things like jihad. They've ignored today. I saw the police ignore people throwing those smoke bomb things and climbing up traffic lights. They were just standing and watching. I thought, and perhaps I'm wrong, I thought that was a crime to do that, but perhaps not when it comes to a protest. I think that the police, I think Darren's right, that the police are worried about the fact that they're always caught on camera. Social media is really disrupting the way that police can actually do their jobs. If you've got cameras in your face while you're trying to arrest someone who you think has committed a crime or seen commit a crime, and you're worried about, you know, being accused of whatnot because the perpetrator happens to be black or Asian or a woman, then they can't really do their job very well.
But,
so I think
maybe they should stop being racist and it might solve the problem. This case that I outlined...
No, but there can always be accusations, though, can't there?
This case, these officers have been sacked because it was determined the only reason they made up a smell of cannabis was clearly because they were black.
I'm talking more broadly about how the police are in a very difficult situation, and I think a lot of them perhaps are underqualified
They're
for the job
also
that they're
widely
doing.
disrespected in this country. I can't think of any police force across Europe where our police are, in comparison, such a walking, talking joke. If they're not doing the Macarena at Pride or painting their cars in rainbow flags or having National Pronoun Day, they're, as Emily said, going to protest today, letting calls for jihad run riot in the street, and yet we've got the wokest police force in Europe.
Oh, what?
And also the most
institutionally racist, sexist, and homophobic. I'd rather them doing the Macarena than the kind of behaviour you see from people like Wayne Couzens. At least then they're engaging with the communities they're meant to make feel safe.
You talk about 1,000 officers being investigated. Is that what you said?
Yeah, suspended.
How many cops are there in the UK?
Well, this was in the Met, and that was 34,000, of which 1,000 are on limited duties or suspended. Well,
look, I'm pro-police. I think, in actual fact, we need to respect our police more, but they need to earn that respect by doing their job properly.
But you can't seriously think they're too woke when you see endless examples
hang on.
of this kind of unacceptable behaviour.
The case that Benjamin is actually talking about, I think it's quite important that you give your opinion on that particular case. They were doing 32 miles per hour in a 20 miles per hour zone. That is illegal. Should the police, do the police have a right
of course they should.
To arrest them?
We don't live in San Francisco.
This is a ridiculous hill to die on. They've sacked the officers, for God's sake.
They've sacked the officers, yes. And actually, I think this is going to have a chilling effect on crimes like the one that was committed against you, being actually the police doing something about it, because they're too afraid of being accused of racist by people like you.
It is absolutely necessary for our safety, our security, that we trust the police and that the police also feel empowered to enforce the law. We need them to enforce the law, otherwise we'll all be victims of many, many more crimes. That does not excuse racist cases where the police have gone overboard and have acted in a nasty, racist, whatever way, or sexist way. Of course not. And there will be bad apples within the police. But I think fundamentally they probably are too soft touch in some instances.
Lewis, would you back a national inquiry into overhauling the police, not just the bigotry that Benjamin talks about, but also, from my point of view, the wokeness and the complete lack of respect that people have got for them?
Well, no, I think that the dealing with the racism stuff is probably more important than the wokeness stuff, because the reason the police are making an effort to be seen to be embracing the LGBT community is because for so long they were after us. So, there's a reason these things are being done. I obviously agree with Benjamin about, the bad behaviour, but I do think it is bad apples. But I think that, we're talking about police officers here. We probably need to be talking about the management. How are these people not being vetted out? How are they not being caught? And I guess on the flip of that as well is, like, who would want to be a police officer in the modern Britain?
Well, they fence a lot of good people off because they now require degrees to become PCs, and that just...
I don't understand.
Can I just quickly sort of draw attention to another point that I was really trying to make, which was that when you get people who have been found to have done misconduct, police officers, so rarely are they actually sacked. You had Stephen Port, a guy that raped and killed 4 gay men, and it was concluded that the 4th murder could have been stopped had police paid more attention. There were 9 officers disciplined. All of them had been promoted in the years since it happened.
That is terrible.
That's an institutional problem.
We do see this in all sorts of institutions and organisations and.
But I think we should expect better of the police.
We absolutely should.
Stuff.
Let us know what you think at home. Do you agree with Benjamin Butterworth that the police are institutionally racist and bigots, and it all needs to be shaken up entirely? Or do you think perhaps they need to be a bit tougher? Still to come tonight, find out from Darren why Elon Musk has called Humza Yousaf a blatant racist, why Ben Leo is packing his bags for the Middle East, and Lewis thinks politics is ruining the dating scene. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Well, Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Pat asks, do you think Labour has changed from a secular to a religious political party? Well, we'll answer that later, I think. In Flummox the 5, we'll save that one for later. Dam says, Benjamin suggests Starmer is tough on anti-Jewish members of his party, but he can't forget Starmer supported Corbyn. Yes, that's very true. Thanks for reminding us. And one more. Tracy says, is Butterworth serious? Police bigots. They're the most woke, soft-touch, lefty-biased force in the world. Well, there you go. 2 different, very different views. But now it's time for our next debate. It's time for Darren's take on Elon Musk's recent escapades on Twitter. Take it away, Darren.
Yes. Now, I want to show you this tweet from Elon Musk in which he says what Humza Yousaf had said in the chamber. It's a few years ago now, but he was talking about white people in positions of power or influence in Scotland under his brief as he was Justice Minister at the time. I think we've got that tweet to show you. Yeah, there it is right now. It was an account tweeted out this video of Humza Yousaf basically using the word white with such venom and vitriol that you start to wonder, what on earth does he have against people with white skin colour? To the extent where Elon Musk, who of course is now the owner of Twitter, now X, and he says, what a blatant racist. And do you know what? I couldn't agree more. Now, Humza Yousaf Yusuf, sorry, I beg your pardon, I think actually continues to show that he does have a form of prejudice, because I would love to see him sit down with lads from council estates in parts of Glasgow, tenements or council flats, whatever it might be, sit down with these white people and say to them, you are inherently privileged because of the colour of your skin. Perhaps their parents are hooked on drugs, maybe alcohol, maybe they didn't read school being able to read and write as well as other kids throughout the rest of the United Kingdom could. And he has the gall to turn around and say that your skin colour means that you are inherently privileged in some way, or that your whiteness is a problem that needs to be curtailed. I think it's a damn disgrace, and any politician doing it should be called out for doing so. Because can you imagine, right? Can you imagine if Kemi Badenoch, who is now Trade Secretary, if she stood up in the House of Commons and she said, look, I think there are far too many black people, perhaps, in positions of power. Do you think she would get away with that? Do you think they would be like, oh, OK, yeah, that's perfectly sensible, that makes sense, why not? That's perfectly acceptable to say. Do you think the Benjamin Butterworths of the world would be clapping like adoring seals? I don't think they absolutely would. So you've got to ask yourself, at a time when Humza Yousaf is facing defections from the SNP, I think there's going to be a widespread defection away from his party. It's divisive. He belittles people, he is a race baiter, and I think ultimately he's going to be punished in the polls for saying all of this nonsense. Emily Carver, Humza Yousaf, are you a fan?
Well, I mean, clearly at the moment he's having trouble because I believe he has family in Gaza. So my heart goes out to him in that respect because he's obviously worrying about his family. But back to his politics, he is absolutely dreadful. You know, people have analysed his policies and the way he acted as Justice Minister and found him to be rather wanting in terms of talent and ability and application. I can't believe, you know, this is the, you know, he's been over-promoted to the max. It's quite astonishing. But that speech you were referring to that he gave is actually shocking, and it gets shared around social media quite a lot. When he refers to all the positions within the government, doesn't he, and says white. He's fuming at the fact that there are white people in positions of power. Why shouldn't there be?
I mean, last time I checked...
Why shouldn't there be? Also, Humza Yousaf is now First Minister of Scotland, and we've got Rishi Sunak as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So I'm not exactly sure what he's so bothered about.
Exactly. I mean, Benjamin says the police force are woke. He was Justice Minister, for goodness sake. The idea that the police force aren't woke is absolutely bizarre. But Ben, I want to ask...
Also, remember when he tripped over on a scooter?
Well, that was quite amusing,
to remove the video.
Yes, I do remember that.
He's called Humza useless for a reason.
I want to ask, though, do you actually think that Scotland are going to turn around and say, look, we've had enough of the SNP. It's been, since 2007, they've been in government. Have they had their day?
Well, look at Scotland's record. They've got the worst drugs death rate in Europe. The attainment gap is catastrophic. It's bigger than it's ever been. They're failing on all fronts. Their NHS is crumbling. And Darren, do you know, or Benjamin, do you know what the population of white people is in Scotland?
It's like 96%?
96%. So can you imagine, Humza Yousaf is of Pakistani origin, could you imagine going to Pakistan, standing up in their parliament and saying, Home Affairs Minister, Pakistani, Environment Minister, Pakistani, Deputy PM, Pakistani. Of course they're going to be Pakistani because there's a majority
Pakistani. You appear to be confusing
Pakistani.
ethnicity and nationality. They're all Scottish. The question is their race. They'd all be Pakistani in Pakistan. The question would be their race.
But why do they have to be of a certain colour?
But the point is...
Should we not judge people on their skills?
I mean, look,
and their,
you know, there's no bigger race baiter than Darren, and that's exactly what his monologue was. No, it was appalling.
That is not fair.
What you don't understand is that it's not saying that a white person has a privileged life to say that they have a privilege over someone who is black or from some other ethnic minorities. It's saying that If those two people were born into a council estate with, drug-addicted parents or something like the scenario you describe, the black kid is going to have even fewer chances and greater prejudice and barriers faced
I'm sorry,
to them
white working
than the
class
white
children are the most
Do you think that's a good
underprivileged in this country.
message, though, for black and ethnic minority kids, to tell them that whatever they do, they're not going to be treated in the same way as a white person? Because in the statistics and actually looking at the facts, that does not hold up. Asian kids are doing extremely well. Black African kids are doing extremely well. Chinese are doing extremely well. Jewish kids doing extremely well. White working class kids are the ones that are failing at the bottom of the pile at the moment, unfortunately, at least when it comes to education and university.
But you missed my point,
No,
Emily.
no, because I just don't agree with it.
No, they face barriers because of their race, irrespective of the other things.
But hang
Let
on,
me give you an
a white person
example.
may face a barrier when they go for a job that is trying to choose ethnic minority candidates first or prioritising them.
But
Well, I
that's
just
trying
don't
to
think it's
remove
helpful.
barriers.
It's not
Look,
helpful.
let me give you an example.
Let me give you an
example.
White working class kids. So answer that question that Emily put to you. Why is it then that you're able to turn around and say, well, this is all a nonsense, because if you're born black in Britain in a disadvantaged community, you're not likely to do very well in life, perhaps, or in school. But actually, the stats don't bear that out. The stats say that, but compared to white working class kids are doing all right if they come from ethnic minority
First of all, I said
backgrounds.
some ethnic minorities, because among ethnic minorities there are people that way excel, Indians being prime among them, right? They have some of the highest average incomes and most successful salaries and careers. But can I just give you an example, which
It's
is...
not the right rhetoric for modern Britain. Modern Britain isn't as you are talking. People have opportunities regardless of their race.
It's also a victim mentality.
Look at our... Anyway, we've got to move on, but we could talk about that one all evening. Still ahead, why Ben Leo is considering abandoning Blighty. And Lewis asks, would you date a communist? You're the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new
It's
t-shirt.
your new t-shirt. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you so much for your emails. Eileen says, I feel sorry for our wonderful police. They're damned if they do something to uphold the law and damned if they don't. Lewis, is that fair cop?
Well, a little bit, I guess.
It absolutely
There's
is.
reasons for it, though. They're in a hard place, but I think it's not about the police. We should be thinking about the management of the police.
Yeah, and John says, why is GB News so cruel to Benjamin by allowing him to embarrass himself talking so much nonsense?
It's a good question.
Gosh, I'm starting to feel sorry for Benjamin.
I'm not.
Right, now it's time for our next debate.
Yes, up next, Lewis is ready and raring to go. He's going to tell us why no one should let politics get in the way of their love life. Ready, set, go, Lewis.
This week, a new dating survey found that extremism isn't sexy, and it was bad news for Trump supporters and communists alike. No one wants their date coming to an early end because someone is going to run off to the latest protest. And parents are quite worried too, worried that their children might end up with someone of a different political view to them. But what we define as extremism is changing. So 55% say that listening to the Joe Rogan podcast would mean that you're extreme. And 41% say that being into astrology, similarly extreme. I would like to remind those people that Joe Rogan's podcast is the most popular podcast in our country, and every newspaper in our country also has a horoscope section. Now, I do agree that having a shared outlook on the world, is probably good for cohesion in a relationship. But the fact that people can't find people that 100% agree with all of their political views is crippling the dating scene. Recently, one liberal TikToker made headlines moaning that the only masculine and chivalrous men she could find were conservative ones. I believe difference can be sexy. And I do think that, passionate debates can turn into passion in the bedrooms.
All right.
So let's stop ruling people out for their political beliefs. So what if they want to rejoin the EU? So what if their dating record, their voting record is not what you would have voted yourself? And maybe by dating people that think differently, we can all learn to come together. So to speak. Ben, would you turn someone down because they wanted to rejoin the EU?
I don't think so on the surface, but look, my wider point is that politics is so tribal these days and so toxic. I think we need to be a bit more tolerant about other people's opinions.
Give over. If your wife started waxing lyrical about Jeremy Corbyn, you'd end it in a heartbeat.
What I was going to say is I particularly like it that my missus doesn't have any interest at all in actually most things that I have an interest in, but she doesn't like politics. She doesn't even like doesn't like my hobbies. She likes me. I work in politics. I'm working around the news. The last thing I want is to go home and for her to start talking to me about the news.
You agree with the poll?
I agree.
Very different in my household. Darren, what's it like being right-wing and gay?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, beggars can't be choosers in my case, so I would go out with a communist, probably. And, do you know, I did date someone who was a Remainer, voted for Jeremy Corbyn, and that lasted 3 months, so...
Oh, the 3 months...
But can I just... Was that awkward at any point? Was it difficult when you really disagreed?
Did they call you a bigot during rounds?
I quite enjoyed it, to be honest. Not in the way that Lewis suggests, but in a sort of... You have your narrative challenged a bit, I guess. I don't mind actually.
That can be sexy as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's not really tribal. Like, if the person feels mortally wounded because you share a different opinion, then obviously it's not going to work. They have to be open-minded and able to actually accept other forms of opinion.
That's the extremity of it.
I think for me it's values. It's not whether you want, a tax rate at 20 or 30% or whatever.
Dumps.
It's about general outlook on the world, what you value. I think that's the most important thing. For some people, that will involve politics. For others,
because you get the kind of people.
I think that the problem is also, as a right winger, I do find that maybe this is a generalisation, but some people on the left, for example, dating apps.
I know what you're going to say.
They put anti-Tory or
Yes.
no Tories allowed.
Yes.
I can't imagine anyone of the Conservative persuasion putting no Labour in their bio.
And let's not forget the T-shirts that Benjamin's worn in the past. Never kissed a Tory T-shirt.
Have
Well,
you?
good luck getting one to kiss you, Benjamin.
I've never kissed a Tory. I've kissed quite a lot of Tories, to be completely honest. But you know, and that's why I thought I would agree with you. I thought I'd be like, yeah, I don't mind what their politics are. And then you said, oh, people that listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, which I consider to be sort of practically conspiratorial. I think that would stop me dating them.
It's not. What are you talking about?
I think that would stop me dating them. If they were obsessed, and also, by the way, I don't think I would want to date a communist either. People that are sort of have such extreme views, who are so possessed by their own
Sorry, saying
thoughts.
Joe Rogan is conspiratorial is equally as extreme. What a load of rubbish.
So there's hardly anyone you can date if Joe Rogan has got the most popular podcast in the UK.
Well, I think it might be the most listened to in the world. I don't know about the UK. But look, do you know, I mean, the nature of doing a job like this is quite strange because I spend a lot of my time surrounded by people that have the opposite views.
And you love it.
And some of them I quite like. Not you guys, but some of them. And so...
Well, Lewis.
And so, yeah, Lewis, exactly. Right. I like Lewis. But I think that actually when people are more obsessed with their views than compromising and listening to the other person, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, no one wants someone banging on about politics 24/7. Anyway, still ahead, Ben's upping sticks and moving to, wait for it, the Middle East. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, Unilever, the firm behind Persil and Dove deodorant, have decided to ditch woke virtue signalling. They finally got the message: go woke, go broke. In My Take at 10, I'll be exposing the scandal of car crime, which has become a national emergency. My Mark Meets guest is a world-renowned expert on plastic surgery. Is a facelift now like going to the hairdressers? Plus my top pundits and tomorrow's papers. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thanks for your emails about tonight's topics. Helen says, political love is a conversation I've had many times with my friends. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the Christie's Carver household. Interesting. Cam says, I agree with Lewis. Politics doesn't matter. I've dated a socialist before as a right-winger, and the only problem I had with her was that she had another 7 boyfriends, so she didn't need another one. Not very conservative. And one more from Christine. If I was a man, I'd date you in a heartbeat. Darren, I love your views. We would get on great.
Well, look, Christine, desperate times. I'm on the turn.
Good stuff. Now it's time for our next debate.
It is. Last but by no means least, it is you, Ben Leo. Ben seems to think Britain is beyond repair. Take it away.
OK, now, events of the last couple of weeks have really got me thinking about the kind of country I want to live in and where I want to raise my family. Never would I have thought that those I share this land with would support the kidnap, torture and murder of fellow human beings, let alone brazenly celebrate such depravity on the streets of this country. The nation I once proudly called home has gone downhill fast. From uncontrolled mass migration and the highest tax burden in decades to our imploding health service and low-grade education. And look, I'll be honest, I want to be wrong, but it feels like Britain is slowly losing its soul. So tonight, I challenge my fellow panellists to give me 3 good reasons why I shouldn't ditch the UK for, say, the likes of, I don't know, Dubai, where the sun always shines, tax doesn't exist, a zero-tolerance approach to crime means the streets are safe from scumbags, and authorities know what it means to have conservative values. So look, with a Labour government all but guaranteed next year, I fear Britain has become completely unsalvageable from its death spiral. And for the time being, at least, that remains true. So, Emily Carver, 3 good reasons, please, why I should be staying in the UK and not running away to Dubai.
Well, you certainly shouldn't be going to Dubai. That would be absolutely ridiculous. Because what have you got in common with Dubai? You know, Britain
I love low tax, I love the sun.
Fantastic country. We've got a rich culture and history that you belong to. Why would you want to up sticks and go to Dubai?
That's precisely my point. I fear our culture, our national identity is being eroded away.
If you leave, if everyone just runs away because they don't like the direction it's going in, then you're just giving up on this beautiful, amazing country. You can't just do that. It's selfish, and we're going to shackle you here so you don't pack your bags and go off. I understand why there is this temptation, not least because of the tax regime and the very strict, no-nonsense approach to, let's say, crime. But no, it's vacuous compared to Britain.
Darren, do you think we're unsalvageable? Are we past the point of no return, especially, by the way, as Labour are guaranteed to
Well, Ben, I've just discovered that you want to lock up the gays, so I'm not sure I should sit here for much longer.
I don't.
But the...
I don't.
Honest, Gov.
You were upset about the scenes that we've seen on the streets of Britain. I would agree. I would concur with those views. But what I would say to you very gently is that if you think the views are going to be different in Dubai, you're in for a rude awakening.
No, but the difference is here we tolerate diversity, we tolerate inclusion, we promote inclusion. Everyone's ideas are welcome. Yet from my point of view in the last couple of years, I feel like Britain, despite being one of the most diverse, open and welcoming countries in the world, to all races, all ethnicities and religions, we get trodden on and we get taken advantage of. If you go to Dubai, they have strict laws. I don't agree with the LGBT laws, by the way, let me just make that clear. But you go there and you know what the laws are and you respect them. You respect the traditions and laws of the country, which is what people don't do when they come here.
But look at the tradition, Ben, the tradition of this country, the history of this country, the generations that were selfless before ours, much before ours, who actually gave up their lives for that cenotaph that's been desecrated by the people that you
And what would they be saying now, looking back?
Well, they would be saying, I gave my life in some cases so that you idiots could run around on the streets doing what you're doing, calling for Hamas to be given sanctuary or something, or whatever it is that they're actually calling for. But I think actually you would do those people a disservice to turn around now and give up on on Britain. I'm not willing to do that.
I'm actually maybe a little bit more with you, but not for the same reasons. But all the young people I speak to nowadays are kind of like, what is the point? Like, what is the point of going to uni, of getting a degree, of getting my way up in a career, when my money, like, half of it is going on my rent, the other on bills? There's, you know, I'm speaking to a lot of young people that are just kind of dismayed, more on the money side and just the prospects of owning a home.
We're in a tricky situation at the moment, but past generations have gone through many more obstacles and bigger obstacles,
absolutely,
I would say, and we had real poverty years ago. And people, of course, there is poverty still in this country, but not on the scale it was decades ago and in the last century. We didn't have war on our doorstep. And, you know, I think things will get better.
I'm optimistic.
Thinking.
I hope things will get better. But try telling that to a 24-year-old that's like, I just don't really see what my future could even be. Just renting for the rest of my life, which costs...
Benjamin, are you going to book a ticket to Dubai in the coming years?
Well, Ben, I'll give you 3 reasons to leave rather than stay. Look, as a selfless man, I'll pay for the ticket for you to head to Dubai myself.
The kids?
Look, there's something quite ironic about this, that people like you on the militant right, you often go on about how we've had too many immigrants into this country, and we've... Have we not? You say we've supposedly imported cultures that are having consequences, like some of the stuff we've seen on the Israel-Gaza protests. So what? You want to go to Dubai, where that is the mainstream opinion, where they literally have Sharia law and no elections. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever.
The UAE came out and strongly condemned Hamas's attacks on Israel and supported Israel.
I bet they did. Well, they got a little bit of money flowing in the other direction.
OK,
I mean, you're very naive.
From an economic perspective, we've got uncontrolled migration. No young people, as Lewis said, aren't going to buy houses anymore. There's no chance of them getting on the housing ladder. Why wouldn't you look, maybe not just to Dubai, why wouldn't you look to Eastern Europe, Poland, anywhere, Bulgaria?
Well, Poland is set to be richer than Britain per head by 2030 because of the Brexit.
Well, there we go. That's my point. Not because of Brexit, by the way. Not because of Brexit.
Can I say very quickly, I went to Dubai earlier this year, and it wasn't really on my list, but I wanted to pop in to see some friends. And it was...
The Sheikh.
I was really impressed by it because there was buildings going up everywhere. It felt like there was development, there was deals being done, there was business and economy moving. And I just thought, my God, I wish we could get that back in this country.
Well, you know what, I'm trying to put a positive spin on this, but I am, like you, a bit depressed about the state of the country at the moment. And I think how Jewish people are feeling has been... Well, it's actually been keeping me up at night. What's been happening, people dismissing anti-Semitism, some people saying, oh, you know, it's not that big a deal, almost, or it's nothing to worry about too much. And then walking past near where I live, one of those posters of a kidnapped Israeli hostage having been torn down just down the road from where I live, that made me feel as though if Jewish people don't feel like they belong, or they don't have sanctuary and community here, then, you know, what's it all been for?
The last couple of weeks has been a realisation of we're in a position and in a state of affairs where I didn't think we were. It's disappointing, it's soul-destroying, and... You know, not just for tax reasons, but if you want to...
On that note, well, that's all we've got time for on that debate. We've got lots more coming up on tonight on the show, though, so do stay tuned. Will the us five, be able to answer 3 11-plus questions correctly and get into the GBNews grammar school? Should we be judging royal staff based on their looks as the king promotes his hunky aid? And why a charity shop has issued a warning after being donated the wrong sort of second-hand toys. Plus, keep your questions flying in for Flummox the 5. Ask us anything. We'll get to them at the end of the show. You're at the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been a pretty unsettled start to the weekend, and that's all due to this large area of low pressure out to the west of the UK, bringing some tighter isobars across the north and south, so some stronger winds here as we go into tonight. Heavy rain making its way northwards and bringing some pretty heavy bursts across southern parts of Wales and southeast England. Well, we'll see some strong gusty winds too. That rain continuing to make its way north through northern England, Northern Ireland, and then later into Scotland as we go into the early hours of Sunday. So a pretty gloomy, wet start here. Some brighter skies across central and eastern parts of England, but for southern and western coasts, it's another blustery day with frequent showers that could bring the odd rumble of thunder as well as we go into the second part of the weekend. Some sunny spells too, and feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine with highs of 13 to 15. So as we go into the new working week, that rain will continue across eastern Scotland, becoming a little more patchy in nature though. Elsewhere, it's another day of sunshine and showers. These still most frequent and heaviest across southern and western coasts, and that continuing as we go into the new week. But temperatures starting to drop a little in the north as we go towards midweek.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's Saturday night. Welcome back to the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver, along with Ben Leo, Benjamin Butterworth, Darren Grimes and Lewis Oakley. Lots more coming up on the show tonight, including we'll spin through some of the big stories of the week you may have missed in Bunch of 5. Our intelligence will be put to the test, God forbid. We'll see which of us 5 will be able to answer 11 plus questions correctly and get into the GB News Grammar School. Plus, should we be judging royal staff based on their looks after King Charles promotes his hunky equerry? We'll be joined by the glorious Christine Hamilton to have this one out. You're watching GB News and this is the Saturday 5.
Yes, that's right. Another great hour coming up. And don't forget Flummox the 5 as well. Anything you want us to answer, we'll do it towards the end of the show. It's guaranteed to be non-scripted, non-rehearsed and nonsensical. Certainly if Benjamin's involved, anyway. So hit us up with everything you've got, GBviews at gbnews.com. But before that, the chaos restarts. Let's get your latest news with Aaron.
Very good evening to you. It is 8:minute. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. Israel's Prime Minister says the next stage of its war with Hamas has begun. Benjamin Netanyahu's confirmed ground forces have entered northern Gaza, what he referred to as the stronghold of evil. The enclave's been pounded with artillery fire and airstrikes since last night, as Israel has launched its heaviest bombardment since the conflict began. Civilians, who've been told to move south for their own safety again, remain cut off as all communications are down. It means no new casualty figures have been released by Gaza's health ministry. Benjamin Netanyahu's warned the fight against Hamas will be long and difficult. He has described it as Israel's second war of independence. Meanwhile, waves of rockets have been fired from Gaza towards southern Israel, with sirens sounding in its biggest city, Tel Aviv. Well, these pictures show a series of missiles being intercepted by the Iron Dome defences. Some landed, including in Tel Aviv and also in the city of Ashkelon. No casualties have been reported. However, a group of protesters appear to have gathered near the Israeli Defence Ministry in Tel Aviv in what appears to be an anti-war rally. More on that when we get it. Around 100,000 people took to the streets of London today, demanding an end to the bombing of Gaza. 2 people were arrested following clashes with police near Downing Street. The Met says one officer's been taken to hospital. Elsewhere, more than 200 people staged a sit-in on the concourse of Waterloo Station. The Met's warned that officers will intervene if protesters are deemed to be supporting terrorism. Former leadership candidate for the SNP, Ash Regan, has defected. She's joined the ranks of the rival Alba party. She's become Alba's first MSP and says her old party had lost its focus on independence. Alba rivals the SNP as a pro-independence party. It was set up by former First Minister Alex Salmond. Humza Yousaf, the leader of the SNP, has played down the defection, saying it's no great loss and that he's not surprised. Meanwhile, forecasters are warning of further flooding to areas of the country that are still reeling from the effects of Storm Babet. Yellow weather warnings are in place for several parts of the country, the east coast of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the south of England. There's been plenty of flooding around the country too because of heavy rain. A shopping centre in Hastings in East Sussex was evacuated earlier because of flooding, and some rail services have been suspended following the damage caused by Storm Babet. We're on TV, digital radio and also on smart speaker. That's it for me for the moment. Now back to the Saturday 5.
Thanks, Aaron, and good evening. It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver. I can promise you that you're in for a very, very lively hour, which will climax with Flummox the 5. So please keep your questions flying in. Stop giggling over there. Yes, so it's time for Bunch of 5. This is where we spin through 5 of the week's big stories and give our always well-considered and very thoughtful opinions. So...
Now, as the Israel-Hamas war continues, today we saw further protests in London in support of Palestine. For the second week running, 100,000 pro-Palestinian protesters marched through the city centre with calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, look, things got quite heated as police were seen clashing with pro-Palestinian protesters, with punches and kicks being thrown and some rather agitated officers. And some let off fireworks and flares on a statue of David Lloyd George. Is standing on statues a step too far, Lewis?
Look, it's obviously hugely disrespectful, but this is a very tense situation where tensions are ramped up so high. I actually think the police do need to be quite careful here. And if they go in and are seen dragging people off, it could set a crowd off. So I actually think the police, they kind of said this week, I think, they're monitoring what's happening, and those extreme things, those things that are illegal, they are after those people, but acting in that moment is not going to help anything.
Yeah, I mean, we do see footage from, say, how the police in Paris, for example, handle these situations, and they're far more heavy-handed.
Let's have it. Let's see it.
But Darren, what do you think? Like, where's the line? Because you don't want to create a mob where people are, you know, throwing things at the police. There's aggression, but at the same time, if people are abusing the law and abusing our statutes, it's not on, is it?
I'm afraid that was the most lily-livered liberal thing I've ever heard. I don't think that's right at all. I think the police should be actually getting in there and saying, if you are shouting jihad, 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 you should damn well be arrested for it. And frankly, we should be more like Dubai and say, if you are here and don't share our values and laws and all the rest of it, sling your hook. Because I'm sorry, we've tolerated... Britain is becoming a doormat for these people who do not share our views and values, and I say sod off.
Can you imagine if we went to Pakistan or Iran or Iraq or any of these other countries and we went onto the street and we said, Christian crusade, Christian crusade? It wouldn't happen. It would not be allowed to happen. And what we need in this country is something akin to Rudy Giuliani's policy in New York, where the broken window policy, where any level of crime, from a broken window to petty theft, is dealt with to stop it spiralling out of control. As Darren said, it's an absolute joke, this country at the moment. The police aren't respected. We're a doormat. And wokesters like you, Lewis, are part of the problem.
I'm just preaching tolerance and love all the time.
They're not tolerant. They're not tolerant on those streets.
No, but I'm saying, what is going to be gained? What is going to be gained by going in there and smashing them up? You're just going to
scumbags off the street.
More. No, but we won't be able to keep them in jail for that long. You don't have enough police officers to take on a crowd that large anyway.
Build more prisons.
You know, I think our democracy is stronger than those other countries, that some of which aren't even democracies at all, and we should be proud of that fact, not fearful of when it's tested.
So you're proud of the scene?
No, I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it, and I don't share their views on the Israel-Gaza issue either. But I think that a free country sometimes has uncomfortable moments, and I'm sure many of those, when there were 100,000, are not all shouting.
Flags punching,
are not all. It's not the Ben Leo show I'm speaking. They're not all shouting jihad. No, I don't need to defend people that are clearly behaving inappropriately. But I think a serious, modern, liberal democracy is strong enough to take a day like this. And it doesn't mean that we need to fundamentally take away some people's freedoms and rights.
Yes, because you know for a full fact, once your Labour lot get in, that it's going to be complete pandemonium on our streets, isn't it? They're going to get away with all sorts.
You know what, I'm just depressed that not even just the police in action, which, you know, is clear, when they ignore chants of jihad and awful, you know, flags being flown. But it's just the fact that this is happening, that people feel like they
I do think the police are quite naive.
It's so depressing.
I think they're quite naive. I don't think most police officers understand some of the stuff being discussed, and so they don't even know where to step, when to step.
They
They do, because they tried to excuse it on their official account.
They said jihad wasn't a cry for war. What was their excuse?
Yeah, well, they said that actually there are many interpretations.
Probably said it was some peaceful.
I think we all know what it means when someone shouts it whilst they're flying some form of flag.
Well, of course, those on the pro-Palestine, those at the Palestine protest would say it was a peaceful, mostly peaceful event.
Looks it.
You know, 100,000 people.
That's like CNN in America, the BLM riots. Mostly peaceful. Oh, by the way, this burning building in the background.
I totally understand why you're annoyed. I totally do. I'm just saying, running in there and hitting people over the head, it's not going to give you the result you want.
Like, it is, because they won't do it again.
Right, let's move on. This week, we heard Rishi Sunak's stark warning over the future of artificial intelligence. Did people hear with everything else going on? But here we go. He set out a dystopian worst-case scenario. He said that society could lose all control over AI, preventing it from being switched off even, though he did caveat that he was generally optimistic about its potential. I'm not so sure. So, after the threats and risks speech from our Prime Minister, are we getting worried about nothing? Benjamin, are you worried that robots could take over the world?
I got a push notification from Uber the other day saying, waiting for date night for that special someone, book your car now. Now, if tech is so bad at thinking that I have a date, then I dare say there's no danger of robots taking over the world anytime soon.
What about when it comes to weapons?
I'm on the fence about AI. I think it's completely ridiculous, as some people want to do, to just say we should not allow it, we should turn it away, we should ignore the tide of technological progress. Our lives are significantly better, unimaginably better to 100 years ago because of tech advantages. And I think you'd be an idiot to just say we should ignore it. But the fact is, when there's suggestions that these things become as intelligent as human beings, I think that's what you have to be careful of, because, you know, human beings can do some bad stuff.
Darren, I was quite alarmed by how much Rishi Sunak focused on the potential dangers of artificial intelligence, but then went on to say, oh, well, it's a good thing anyway.
Well, I mean, Benjamin doesn't want robots to take over the world, but he wants a robot to take over the country in the form of spikiest.
How long did you spend coming up with that one?
The problem here is that actually this is a government that put forward the online safety bill,
yes.
which gives Ofcom, dare I mention their name, the power to police the internet. And that, I think, is going to end in there being less freedom online to say things like we've all said throughout this show. For example, Labour want to bang people up for being misogynistic. You know, if I make a joke, crack a joke on the internet, am I going to be banged up? Will Benjamin be coming to visit me?
You're going to try
in
it
a
out.
cell?
I think it's highly unlikely.
I can take it.
I think it's highly unlikely you'll successfully make a joke.
I think actually this country for a long time has had a productivity crisis, right? AI can actually boost our productivity and help us get things done quicker, essential things that we all need to do in our day-to-day lives, and help us live more fruitful lives.
What about the threat of them taking over the world, though, because they could, and they have no empathy? In the same way as humans. And what if you lost the on-off button? These robots could take... I'm being deadly serious here. These robots could be told that they're on a mission to do, you know, X, Y and Z, and in military terms could lead to genocide.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's hope not. I mean, Elon Musk has said that one of the greatest threats to humanity is AI, and actually above what people call the climate crisis. So it's a genuine point. But, Lewis, this is going to mean, I assume, and many experts agree, lots of lost jobs, automation everywhere. Are we going to get to a state where we're going to have the benefit system completely collapsing under the weight of people out of work?
Well, look, no, I think we do need to have long-term planning with this. I mean, I kind of feel like Rishi Sunak is just looking for any old legacy, so a bit of AI legislation is what he's going to do. But on your point, look, AI has got some really great benefits to us. It'll be performing operations, it will be helping us learn, it will be doing so many great things. But you are right, it will mean that less people will have jobs. So we are going to have to think ahead to that.
But it will never go on strike.
Can I just quickly say, the idea that tech and automation means that there won't be enough jobs to go round. If that were true, we would have higher unemployment now than 100 years ago.
Agree.
We don't. We've had very high employment in this country for 20 years. And the truth is, lots of these jobs are things that human beings don't particularly want to do.
People thought, you know, the computer would put everyone out of work. Instead, it created new opportunities. Perhaps it's the same with AI.
I think it'll be similar, but I think we are going... Like, no one wants to work 5 days a week anymore. I mean, people want 4 days a week, want less days a week. So I actually think that AI is going to enable that.
Right, next up, moving on. Next on the agenda is a group of celebrities who have written to our Prime Minister over the hunting ban. The celebs, who are backed by the campaign group PETA, have urged Rishi Sunak to ban children from attending all hunting activities, including trail hunts, which they say are often used as smokescreens for killing wild animals. Now, the Countryside Alliance have hit back and said the demands were, quote, hysterical, and that the government should reject the idea if it wants to be taken seriously in the countryside. So, are they chasing their tails with this debate, Darren?
I just think I'm sick of being told what to do by some jumped-up vegan with green hair, because that's what all these people look like. These communities are belittled on everything from net zero makes it really hard to be a farmer, for example. We're told that actually your vehicles are emitting too many things, and actually the way in which we rear animals is all wrong and all the rest of it. We actually need people in the countryside to be able to cull the population of certain animals. That's just a fact of life. I'm afraid that's nature, baby. And all of these things, I think, are symptomatic of a culture in which we are punishing those who are the most hard-working and stretched people that we've ever known in this country.
Oh,
Farmers
come off
are past it. You try being a farmer
Aristocratic
for 2
landowners. Why don't we get a dog to tear you apart while everyone cheers along? It's
Benjamin,
inhumane
you talk
and
about
ugly.
Things you don't know anything about.
Indeed.
Well, I wouldn't have a job if that were the case.
About farming.
Well, actually,
it's not a difficult job.
I'm afraid you're mistaken. I have farmers in my family in Yorkshire.
Well, have you spoken to them?
Well, they wouldn't go fox hunting, I'm sure of that.
Watching this right now, calling them lazy.
I didn't call them lazy. I said the idea that people who go fox hunting are the poorest people in the country is ridiculous.
I think the point here is that celebrities should not be telling other people what to do.
This is an activity of poshos, right? And it is an ugly and unacceptable thing to do. It's not a sport. It's a torture of animals. And I think most people, well, we know most people think fox hunting should be illegal.
But this was also referring to, you know, fake hunting activities. You know, like
they're not fake, though.
That are not actually killing any animals. I mean, what does a celebrity have to do with telling other people?
Well, this goes back to Coogan and his ilk writing that stupid letter about Palestine and not even once mentioning the atrocities of October the 7th.
Well, I don't know who these celebrities were. We're talking about it. That's what they're doing. They're using their power, coming together and saying we want to raise attention. So that's what we're talking about.
And by the way, is this yet not another attack on Britain's identity and tradition and all the things that people of chasing defenceless animals?
Is it not actually an attack on you being able, and I isolate you in particular for a reason because you have children? Is it not an attack on you for actually what you want to do, your autonomy as a parent, for how you want to rear your child?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a liberal at heart. Sorry, a libertarian, not liberal. Let's get that straight. I don't want the state involved in anything. I don't want external agencies involved in my life. I want state intervention as little as possible. If I don't go hunting. I don't see the appeal. I have a shotgun licence. I go clay pigeon shooting.
Oh, we better behave.
If the government or, God forbid, celebs came to me and said I couldn't take my son's clay pigeon shooting because of, you know, noise pollution or some stupid excuse they've come up with, I'll tell them to where to go.
Right, well, next... We're going to have to cut that short, sorry. Next up, GBNews' very own Christopher Hope has offered us an insight into what's really going on at Westminster. Chopper has revealed that Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons, no less, is changing the rules to require all male MPs to wear a tie. So, according to the 2021 edition of Rules of Behaviour and Courtesies in the House of Commons, men are encouraged to wear a tie. Now, this is changing. Hoyle's new version says they will now be expected to do so. Now, this is very interesting indeed, because standards in the House of Commons have been slipping, I've noticed. Does this really mean no tie, no voice? Benjamin, when was the last time you wore a tie?
I think I've only worn them at funerals and weddings. I don't wear ties, and I think very few people do in reality. They're quite uncomfortable. I feel a bit choked by them when I have it, but maybe I should eat fewer Bakewell tarts and I might not be so fat. But, you know, I think this idea that not wearing a tie is unprofessional is ridiculous because, you know, most people, most men, don't wear ties to work in this day and age, so why should we expect MPs to behave in a different way when that's not what the country looks like?
Not even in our heart of democracy.
They're setting the standard.
Well, your lot aren't.
Well, I'm not wearing a tie right now, but I'm not a member of Parliament.
Thank God.
I think they actually set a standard in the country and that they should be dressing nicely, unlike Jeremy Corbyn, who looked like he just rolled out of a bush.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that Lindsay Hoyle hasn't mentioned women. Presumably he would be a little frightened to talk about the female fashion in the House of Commons because, let me say, sometimes it is very much smart casual. Well, it's pushing the definition of smart casual. It's very much casual. Some of what the ladies are wearing.
I think it depends on the establishment. I think if you're in Parliament and you're an elected representative, stick a damn tie on, for God's sake. Yeah. Well, look, moving on to our last bunch of five for this week, a bizarre story about a plea from Bernardo's children's charity. One of their shops in Swansea, in Wales, has found itself begging people to think more carefully when choosing what to donate. So in a rant on social media, the charity expressed their outrage at the X-rated second-hand items that were being donated. I guess you could say they were being rubbed up the wrong way. The shop offered two reminders. One, that they have a range of ages when it comes to their customers, but they also do have CCTV. And the risky donated items, I dread to think what they could be.
Or risque.
Yeah, it could be traced back to their owners. So it sounds like customers are miffing Bernardo's with their saucy toys. Lewis, would you buy a second-hand sex toy?
I personally would not, but, you know, why should people in poverty not be able to buy a sex toy? I mean, I see it, and, you know,
used one.
You can at least clean them. There are some people you can't clean. But I do think this is slightly inappropriate.
Goodness me. Yeah, no, I thought you were going to continue there.
Oh, no, sorry.
I was wondering where you were going to go.
I thought you were saying you've gone too far.
No, I was wondering wondering where you were going to go with that.
No, I mean, look, I personally wouldn't do it, and I personally wouldn't buy it. But I guess that there is definitely going to be people out there that would argue that actually there is a gap between people, and why should people not have access to those things?
I mean, doesn't this promote just the massively increased risk of STDs and?
No, because you clean things.
Oh.
Can I just say, I think this is outrageous of Bernardo's. The way they're saying, we've got CCTV, we can trace who donated it. How dare they be so uppity and judgmental? Someone is giving that because they want to sell it. It's a perfectly reasonable thing. Adults buy these things, often for quite a bit of money. And so I think, they shouldn't be so judgmental of their donors.
No, you're wrong. What's happening here?
I'm never wrong, Emily.
If you look outside a charity shop in the early hours, what will you find? You will find bin bags of absolute rubbish that people just don't want to keep in their homes anymore. It's just a version of fly tipping. That's what it is. People put, used underwear in there. They put clothing that's, fallen to pieces that no one is going to buy from the charity shop. So then the charity shop has to deal with all of that rubbish, go through it. And I'm saying this because I've worked at a charity shop and I know the garbage that people chuck into the charity shop just because they can't be bothered to take it to the tip. Rant over.
Are you telling people to stop being so generous? We're a nation of
be generous, but with proper stuff that people want to buy, because it is a shop, after all, not a dumping ground. Anyway, still to come tonight, with Labour's pledge to tax private schools more, will grammar schools suddenly be overrun with applicants chasing ever fewer spots? We'll also see who out of the five of us is smarter than an 11-year-old. Could it be Butterworth? Could it be Grimes, Oakley, Leo? We'll put the 5 to the 11+ test. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good evening, welcome back to the Saturday 5. So here's a question. Could Labour's tax plans for private school fees fuel demand for grammar school places? It's already a pretty competitive market. So much so that thousands of parents of hopeful Year 6 students will have been prepping, putting their kids through private tuition, trying to get them through the 11 plus exams. But just how hard is the 11 plus, and are grammar schools really all they're cracked up to be? Well, who better to ask than an 11 plus tutor? London-based tutor Zahir Varani joins us now. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Zahir. So how tough is the 11 plus as an exam? And do you reckon the 5 of us could pass it without doing any preparation?
I doubt you'd pass it without any preparation unless you've got a maths background. I'm sure you guys will be all right with the creative writing side. But the maths aspect, it covers a lot of stuff that would be covered like in the first 2 years of secondary school, like simultaneous equations, more complex algebra, and it's quite time pressured as well. And then on the other hand, there's also the non-verbal reasoning and the verbal reasoning, which is something that's not taught in primary schools at all. So it is really difficult for someone, particularly from a working class background or something like that, without any tuition to pass a grammar school test. It's almost a fallacy that grammar schools provide like a potential leg up for the working class, because there's not really any way for you to get in a position to pass it unless potentially if your parents are teachers or they have some academic background. Without tuition, it's very difficult. And for most adults, it would be extremely difficult, I think, as well.
So, Zahir, are you finding that more and more parents are looking for tutors because admission to these schools is just so competitive?
So with the cost of living crisis, we've got a lot of private school, kids that would traditionally apply to private schools also looking to apply to grammar schools as well, from that perspective. And also post-pandemic, a lot of kids have fallen behind, so there's a lot of demand for tutoring just on that basis as well, just to catch up essentially. It's quite busy
and
at the moment.
Just lastly, do you think it's good, the best choice for most academically minded children to go to a grammar school? Because it seems to be, all these parents are desperate for their child to go to one. You don't have to pay for it, unlike a private school. But is it the best choice?
So for me personally, I went to a state school, and in my primary school, which was a good primary school, I wasn't like the top in the year. I was maybe among the top, 5 or 6 or something. But when I went to my state school, I was a top student from day one, and that gave me a lot of motivation, and that was more beneficial for me. So I say that, it depends on the kid. If the kid's very competitive at grammar school and he's competing with a higher kind of caliber of peers, that could be beneficial. But it could also be good if you're in a state school, as long as it's safe and it's, of a decent standard. Then if you're among the better students in the state school, it might build your confidence a bit more in that aspect. So it depends on the student, I think.
Yeah, well, there are lots of people who would like to see grammar schools shut down because they don't see them as being, giving equal opportunities. But that's a debate, a long-held debate, long-standing debate. Thank you very much indeed, Zahir Varani, London-based 11-plus tutor. Thank you for your insight this evening. Well, that was interesting. I reckon he's wrong, though. I reckon we can pass it straight away without any training. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to see if we can answer these questions. Do you know the difference between non-verbal and verbal reasoning? Well, we'll find out. I think non-verbal is the shapes, but I may be wrong. Anyway, would you believe that the 5 of us will now be tested with 3 11-plus questions to see if we'd be eligible for grammar school? And not just any grammar school, the GBNews grammar school. We're going to be tasked with the verbal reasoning category, which I think we can safely say we're all pretty bad at. I will be the host, so over to me. And we'll have 1 minute only to work out our answer. Only 1 minute. Well, here we go. Should we go to question number 1 then, guys?
Yep, let's do it.
Are we ready? OK. Now, number 1. And at home, please do try to work out these questions too. We must work out which statement is true, A, B, C, D or E, after listening to the following. So, Freddie's grandpa's name is Dennis. Dennis drives a red car. Dennis is also the name of a company which makes fire engines. Fire engines are usually red in colour. A fireman drives... Oh, so the answers are... I'm getting lost here. Right. So A, firemen drive red cars. B, Freddie's grandpa is a fireman. C, Freddie's grandpa is a driver. D, Freddie's grandpa makes fire engines. E, all red vehicles are fire engines. OK, guys, so get your thinking
Dennis
caps on.
drives a red car.
Can we keep it up? So we can have a little look.
I need to read that again.
We need to read it again. We need to get it up.
I've only got a minute. Come on.
Graphic, come on. We're running out of time. I think we're down to half a minute.
Freddie's grandpa's name is Dennis. Dennis drives a red car. Dennis is also the name of a company which makes fire engines. Freddie's grandpa's name is Dennis. Dennis drives a red car. I'm just going to take a punt. My brain can't work that out.
OK, right. What do we reckon? OK, Lewis says B. Freddie's grandpa is a fireman. Benjamin?
A.
A, OK. Anyone else?
D.
D? Darren?
Well, should I just say a different one, just to be...
OK, you're going for E. Now, the answer is, drum roll, please, it's C. Freddie's grandpa is a driver. So I see what the tutor we just spoke to was talking about. That was a little bit confusing, wasn't it? I'd have to probably draw it out.
What's the point in that?
Well, it's so that, you know, you have to show intelligence.
I'd rather my
to do
kids were
such
taught
things.
about economics, credit scores, money.
No.
You know, what?
You need this stuff first. It's very
Not
important.
if I go to a state school.
Well, should we do question number 2? You must solve the following. Matthew is half as old as Zena
They already
will
sound
be
posh.
next year. Simone is 6. Zena is 2 years older than Simone was last year. How many years old is Matthew? OK, right, we can do this one. This is just a bit of maths.
Matthew is half as old as Zena will be next year. Simone is 6. Zena's 6, 7, 8. Right, I've got it.
How many years old is Matthew? OK, Ben Leo's got it. Anyone else? Anyone else?
I'm literally lost.
My lucky number.
Listen, it's 8:30 at night, and...
Too difficult? Too difficult.
4.
OK, it's 4.
Yes.
It's 4. Ben got it right.
And I've got a G in GCSE maths.
Ben got it right.
There we go.
And we've only got one question left, so let me know if you've got these right or wrong. For our third and final question, we must solve the following. Jake, Hannah and Tanya each run in a timed cross-country race. Tanya starts her run at 10 a.m. Hannah takes 5 minutes less than Jake to complete the course. Jake started his run 10 minutes before Tanya and finished at 10:20 a.m. Hannah finished at 10:15 a.m. Which following statement is therefore true? A. Hannah runs faster than Tanya. B. Jake and Tanya take the same amount of time. C. Tanya is the last to finish. D. Hannah and Jake started at the same time. E. Jake finished after Tanya.
Why would you send your kids to a school that does this to them?
Well, I'm glad you're agreeing on scrapping grammar schools. I don't have a clue.
I'm in support of grammar schools. It doesn't mean I would have gotten into one.
Well, we can see that.
I'm not sure you're even trying. I bet our lovely viewers at home are thinking...
I'm sure you've all got it at home.
Are thinking they've got it, you know? All you need is...
You don't sound like you've been to a grammar school.
You need a pad.
I'm going to go with D.
You need a sheet of paper. And you're correct, Benjamin. The answer is D.
You
Hannah
just
and
read
Jake
that.
started at the same time. Well, there you go. That was ever so slightly painful. So do let us know at home.
I'm so sorry to viewers at home.
If you got any of those correct, none of them at all, it looks like we're not going to be going to the GBNews grammar school anytime soon.
Well, I can safely say we failed that one, no doubt. Thanks for that, guys. Still ahead, is it OK in this day and age for us to be judging royal staff based on their looks? Find out what the superb Christine Hamilton makes of King Charles' dishy right-hand man. Not my words, by the way. Next, you're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, in my big opinion, Unilever, the firm behind Persil and Dove deodorant, have decided to ditch woke virtue signalling. They finally got the message: go woke, go broke. In my take at 10, I'll be exposing the scandal of car crime, which has become a national emergency. My Mark Meets guest is a world-renowned expert on plastic surgery. Is a facelift now like going to the hairdressers? Plus my top pundits and tomorrow's papers. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. Now, King Charles has promoted his so-called hunky aide, who left the nation swooning after he stole the show at the coronation. He's been promoted to his chief right-hand man, meaning we now get to see more of him. Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Thompson, who's been dubbed Major Eye Candy, reportedly received his promotion after he charmed Charles and Queen Camilla. And according to news reports, he was due to leave the army within 18 months, but there seems to have been a bit of a change of heart. I do wonder why. But is it OK in this day and age for us to be judging royal staff based on their looks? I'm joined now by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. Christine, come on then, scores on the doors for the King's new right-hand man. Does he do it for you?
Oh, absolutely. And he did have the nation swooning. Look, he's terrific. I mean, he's handsome. He looks wonderful in a kilt, fabulous legs. What's not to like? Camilla obviously likes having him around. Clearly, he has other skills as well. It isn't just that he's eye candy. If that's all he was, he wouldn't get the job. But no, why not? I mean, my butler is incredibly hunky. I make him go around in shorts. Why not?
So, look, Christine, from a woman's point of view, we're looking at the pictures now. What is it about this chap that you think has got females hot, well, and men, I guess, as well, hot under the collar?
Yeah, I think you're right, and men too. Well, look, a man or a woman, look, the uniform is a great sex appeal, usually. Not everybody, but if
what's your favourite, Christine?
Put you in uniform. Pardon?
What's your favourite uniform for a man? What does Neil like to wear?
I don't mind. The Navy, of course, the senior service, but when I'm not near the uniform I love the uniform I'm near. It enhances anything. It really does. And, you know, he's obviously... They want to have him around. He clearly gets on very well with Camilla. Charles would never promote somebody who wasn't pleasing to his wife and all sorts of... Sorry, that sounds awful. You know what I mean. Of course, he's not there just because of his look, but his looks do not hinder him. And I'm delighted to be there because I liked seeing him on television. I loved seeing him during the coronation and the late Queen's funeral. I think he just added a little bit of je ne sais quoi, as the French would put it, to the whole thing. So, yeah, I'm a Johnny fan, massive Johnny fan.
Well, look, Christine, all jokes aside, is it fair we're judging men by their looks these days? Look, if I sat here talking about a woman in the same way, I think I'd be thrown in the Tower of London. So isn't this just a load of sexist guff?
Yes, you would be thrown in the Tower of London, but come on. Men have been talking about women in this way since time immemorial. And isn't it about time we balanced up the sex? Why shouldn't women, even women of a great age like me, why shouldn't we discuss the eye candy aspect of a man? Why not? What's wrong? What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, the other way around.
So if this guy was on the cover of Men's Health, say, next week, would you be rushing out to buy it?
No, I wouldn't. No, because no, I wouldn't. I'd rather see him in his uniform than in the sort of gear that I gather, I don't buy it, is worn by people, or not worn by people who are posing for Men's Health. But, listen, seriously, I take your point. We are objectifying him as a handsome man. Why not? People have objectified women as beautiful or whatever for time immemorial, as I said, and I think it's about time the girls had their chance too. So why not? I am excited that Johnny is going to be in the public eye for a bit longer.
Let me just check you then. If I sat here tonight and we did a segment on a young royalist in waiting, a young female, really beautiful, attractive 25-year-old, would you be equally as happy to come on this show and talk about how she's going to be getting all the men and everyone's going to be checking her out at the coronation and whatever else?
No, because she probably doesn't rock my boat the way that Johnny does. So no, you're quite right. I completely understand the point you're making. If we were doing this about a woman, we would all be horrified. But we're not. We're doing it about a man. Look, he's a soldier. He's been in battle. He can take it. He probably secretly enjoys it. He's happily married. He's got a kid, if not more. And why not? He's good at his job. And if he helps the king and the queen to do their job better, then I'm all for it. And if it's a little bit of light-hearted fun for the rest of us, why not? But you're quite right. Yes, if you were objectifying a female employee like that, I would be horrified. I quite agree. I'm a hypocrite like everybody else.
What does this say about the monarchy and Charles's intention to cling on to the throne? Because, of course, there are whispers that, and definitely some on the sidelines who are urging Charles to abdicate for Kate and William. Is this a sign of intent, perhaps, from Charles that he's willing to stick around and he's shoring up his, his inside circle?
I don't like your use of the word cling on to the throne. It's his birthright. Whether you accept the hereditary principle and approve of it or not, it's what we have. It's his birthright. He is the king, and it's his as long as he wants it. It's nothing to do with clinging on. The Queen always made it clear that she would never abdicate. She regarded it as something she had to do until she died, and it remains to be seen whether Charles continues that tradition. But he's not clinging on. He's doing his duty. And frankly, I think he's doing it damn well. And if Johnny Thompson helps him to do that duty, then here's to Johnny Thompson.
Christine Hamilton, you're a legend as ever. Thank you for your words of wisdom. Enjoy your evening. Benjamin Butterworth, is that King Charles' right-hand man? Does he do it for you? Is he a dishy?
Well, I only got this job because of my looks, so I'd be a hypocrite. I don't know what you're laughing at, Emily. Look, I mean, I do actually think that objectifying people in this way is quite unhealthy because, it might sound like a compliment to those people, and of course there are much worse things you can be called, but actually even people on receipt of those kind of compliments can really get self-conscious about it, can think that it's the only reason that you're interested in them. Yeah. And I do think that, it's more commonly how women are referred to, and I think you're not just beautiful, you're brains as well, Emily.
Oh, thank you.
It does help.
Patronising tone. It's pretty privilege, isn't it? Yeah. For women and men. Yeah. If you look all right, you're going to probably do better in some situations.
Look, I don't see anything wrong with saying women are beautiful or they're attractive, or even in some situations that their looks may have helped them, get into certain positions. But that's not acceptable in this day and age in society. And I just think when people are, men and women, so happy to swoon, as we've described it tonight, over men in positions of authority or, in quite respectful jobs. I mean, is he happy with the way that people are sort of objectifying him like this?
But
it's not very respectful.
Risk the way women are,
exactly,
of that being the only
point.
thing. So, Christine's right, it is double standards. But, you know, as someone bisexual, I can appreciate a good-looking man. I told you to get that.
A good-looking man and a good-looking woman.
Oh my God, we haven't heard that before.
This is my coming out moment. No, but, you know, even I have to be quite careful because I can go around and say, oh, he's hot. But then you have, like, you can't say that about, you have to check yourself about women. So it is double standards, but there's reasons for the double standards.
Yeah, good point.
Yes, women fundamentally are at risk more from men than vice versa, although perhaps you dispute that.
No, I agree with that.
Physically.
Something I hadn't thought
anyway,
of.
physically anyway. But still ahead, we'll be answering your questions in Flummox the 5. Still time to get those burning questions in, but be quick. We're collating them right now for you. We're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Now then, it is finally time for Flummox the 5. This is my favourite bit, where you wonderful viewers set the agenda for the rest of the show. Thanks very much for sending in your questions. So I'm going to get the ball rolling with this one first. This is one we got sent earlier, actually, in the show from Pat, but we didn't answer it. She asks, do you think Labour has changed from a secular to a religious political party? Well, actually, that's a bit of a rather odd question, actually, now I read it twice. What do you think she means by that, Darren?
Well, I think she's arguing that actually that many in the Labour Party feel that they're completely beholden to those who are obviously deeply religious. And, well, I think she's perhaps alluding to one religion more than others. But, I mean, it's gone from the time of Tony Blair saying we don't do God to the Labour Party being absolutely terrified of God.
I mean, I don't think the Labour Party is terrified of God. It's got lots of Christians. There's a strong Christian socialist history. Look, I don't like the idea at all of people's religious views determining their political views and how other people should be governed. You're free to have your religious views, but I don't think you should inflict them through the means of party politics and government.
The problem is that they do get intertwined, which is deeply unfortunate, really. And as we've seen, there's been some polling, and I don't know if it's true or not, but showing that Labour Party is losing the Muslim vote at the moment, which is quite worrying, actually, because your religion shouldn't necessarily inform your politics in Britain in such a way.
Well, it's worrying because of actually the reason why, right? In standing up and saying immediately after the October 7 terrorist attack on Israel, in saying, actually, I don't agree with Sir Keir Starmer's stance on being robust on this. That's worrying. That's troubling.
It's very troubling. Our next question is from Cam. Cam asks, my new girlfriend, emphasis on the new, thinks our flat is haunted because things keep moving in the night. I sleepwalk and have a tendency to move things. Do I tell her, or will she leave me? Lewis, you're the relationship expert.
You definitely have to tell her, because she's going to be so creeped out if she wakes up in the middle of the night. I have had this with an ex that kind of said, by the way, I sleepwalk and don't worry about it. And I couldn't sleep. I was so terrified that she was going to, like, wander off down the street. So tell her. I mean, it's quite fun to have that whole little play with
She probably just didn't enjoy your conversation. Sent she was sleepwalking, so she could
Is that what happened? Oh, my God, I've only just put that together.
She was just leaving. She hadn't had enough.
I don't understand why couples have to share a bed. Whenever I've had a romantic partner, I don't want to sleep in the same bed all night.
What?
So I think separate bedrooms, that's the answer.
I do that. Not permanently, but when I come back late from work, if I get in at 2 in the morning, I'll sleep on the sofa downstairs.
No.
Don't want to wake up the kids or Rihanna
but not
upstairs.
everyone is in a position to be able to use the other bedroom, though, are they? Like, some couples...
They've got a sofa.
Well,
you go downstairs and sleep on the sofa.
It is
might be a small sofa.
There's something very nice about sharing a bed with your partner, but there are some circumstances when one can't sleep very well, for example, and you continue to be woken up throughout the night. That's probably not the best for your relationship. I didn't realise we were going to be giving relationship advice on this. I think honesty is probably the best policy when it comes to this. I think if you don't tell her, it could go a bit tits up, as it were.
But if she's believing that there is such a thing as a poltergeist, then maybe she's not for you, mate. That's all I can say.
Oh, no, we're telling her to dump her.
If she's watching, then you should stay with her for the rest of your life. But if she's not, pull the plug.
Yeah, she sounds like a nutter.
OK, shall we get our next question? This one is from Chris. Now, Chris asks, why don't Darren and Benjamin go on a date to a nice restaurant or something? They seem very comfortable with each other, even though they disagree on everything. I think this one is referring to our conversation earlier, which Lewis brought up, which was about whether you should date people outside your political viewpoint. So, Darren, would you take up Benjamin on a date?
I think that I am very happy in Benjamin's company. But whether or not that would manifest itself in any romantic setting, I'm not sure.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Oh, brutal!
I do actually owe Darren dinner, so that's
from my
but it's not a romantic
Typical
one.
Socialist, he's been.
Neither of you would ever admit it.
Well,
but look, workplace romances are, apparently,
dangerous.
they're not allowed these days. ITV this week said that anybody who's having a friendship, let alone a romance, has to declare it to their bosses.
I think that is awful. I think that is awful.
I think
back in the day, back in the day, people used to, that used to be the first place you'd meet someone.
Yeah, it's all a bit sad, isn't it? Monotonous. You can't speak to anyone anymore without telling HR about it.
Also, can you imagine most guys would run a mile if they thought just going on a date with you would mean that they'd have to tell their employer and everything? Because then it's like, what if something goes wrong?
Get it signed off by your boss.
Get
some public liability insurance.
Though, I think you guys should take a GBNews camera for your date, and I think that'd be really good television.
Well, at least something would be good television. We can welcome that. I do think it's awkward. Imagine sort of starting to date someone and then the awkwardness of asking them on a date and then having to tell your boss. I think.
Well, maybe one day you'll be on Celebs Go Dating.
One last question.
Yeah, Neil asks, why can so many not pronounce the letter X? The word is Brexit, not Brexit. Exit, not exit. Luxury, not luxury. Well, I hope you're not referring to my pronunciation there. But yes, this is a very big problem, isn't it, Ben Leo?
Well, it's the same thing as saying H when it's... Oh, sorry, H?
I can't bear it.
That's the one.
It's H.
The correct pronunciation, of course, is H.
You know what? We talked about would you date people with different political opinions.
Common as muck.
I would not date someone who said H. It goes through me like nails
Hang on,
on a chalkboard.
I've forgotten the correct pronunciation. It's
H.
not H.
With an A. H.
It's
H.
revolting.
Terrible. It does my head in.
Well, let us know at home if you disagree with that. Do you think that we're losing our standards when it comes to pronunciation of words?
I mean, I'm terrified to speak now. I'm from the Midlands and my accent's changed, but I have a twang, so I'm just terrified. Just leave people alone. You know what they're saying. Leave it. What's the problem?
Well, on that note, we're leaving our viewers and listeners. That's it from us. Thanks to the wonderful Lewis Oakley for being our guest tonight, and to all of our wonderful viewers. Thank you very much for sending in so many questions. The one and only Mark Dolan is next, and we look forward to seeing you this time next week.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been a pretty unsettled start to the weekend, and that's all due to this large area of low pressure out to the west of the UK, bringing some tighter isobars across the north and south, so some stronger winds here as we go into tonight. Heavy rain making its way northwards and bringing some pretty heavy bursts across southern parts of Wales and southeast England. Well, we'll see some strong gusty winds too. That rain continuing to make its way north through northern England, Northern Ireland, and then later into Scotland as we go into the early hours of Sunday. So a pretty gloomy, wet start here. Some brighter skies across central and eastern parts of England, but for southern and western coasts, it's another blustery day with frequent showers that could bring the odd rumble of thunder as well as we go into the second part of the weekend. Some sunny spells too, and feeling pretty pleasant in the sunshine with highs of 13 to 15. So as we go into the new working week, that rain will continue across eastern Scotland, becoming a little more patchy in nature though. Elsewhere, it's another day of sunshine and showers. These still most frequent and heaviest across the southern and western coasts, and that continuing as we go into the new week. But temperatures starting to drop a little in the north as we go towards midweek.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top